thought I could use my phone. Is there a cap? Three, four, six, seven, yes. Oh. Thank you. Yeah, that works. Perfect. Thank you.
I'm hopeful for the Hurricanes in 2 years.
Me too. Me too. Let's see what happens.
A couple of the offensive linemen, I look like I'm in better shape than them. And that's bad.
Yeah, it's it's I'm just, you know, I get it. It's not his team, it's not his people, but it's pretty good. I don't think it should be this bad.
No, my brother gave up his club seats
Did he?
2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say they've gotten more expensive now. When they first hired him, it would have been a bad call, but I think he made the right call. He's still got a couple of years of cheap ticket prices.
Yeah.
Is anything else?
Good.
Kitty's fine?
Yeah, he actually is joined the wrestling team this year.
Yeah? That's excellent. Did you wrestle before? Did you wrestle?
Yeah, don't you remember? I was the one that got Father Paul into wrestling.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But now I remember you did tell me that.
It was my fault that you had a...
He's man, it's a great school. I was actually just talking about it with the meeting I was at before this. He you know, one of the trustees there, he used to wrestle too, and so his son just started wrestling also. And that was the conversation. I was like, man, I used to. It was always I did it to stay in shape, and I was always in the best shape. But man, I hated the weight. It was fucking terrible. And it was, you know, looking back, it was the most unhealthy. I mean, I was surprised like nobody died. I mean, we had on those nylons, and we were just like sitting in the sauna.
Well, they just did
trying
the
to cut
doctor
weight.
thing,
Yeah.
where they give you the range.
Yeah.
They actually started that my senior year.
What weight class is your son?
52, 152.
So he's big.
Yeah.
That's a big.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Everybody ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the Firefighter Pension Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks for coming. Hello. So next is the open forum. I don't see anyone. Okay. And then the first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the September 12th meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next item is the quarterly plan investment report. Okay.
Ready for me to get going on that?
Ready? Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So this information here would be as of September 30th. So these will be your fiscal year in numbers, which of course are the important numbers for the year. And this is we've entered the actuarial evaluation season. So these are the numbers that'll be used as far as calculations for contribution rates and so on. So for the dollar amounts themselves, starting the quarter, you had about just over 8.4 million. It was 88,000 in contributions that came in. Saw an earnings decrease of 364,000, paid out 21,000 in distributions, had just under 21,000 expenses. So the ending balance for the fiscal year, $8,122,802.34. And I think if you scroll down to maybe page 13, that should have the investment returns on there. Perfect. Yep. Back, I think back a couple. Yeah, there you go. So obviously, with the dollar amounts being down for the quarter, we had negative returns again, down a little over 4.25% for the quarter, and then the year, the fiscal year number down 16.88%. Or I'm sorry, that's the year-to-date number. The fiscal year number down 13.28%. So that's the important number as it relates to the valuation. Nothing new as far as what was guiding the market. So not a whole lot of big information or big things going on. Just continued to struggle with inflationary numbers and then rising interest rates. Really just kept the market depressed for the whole entire 2022 through September 30th. This particular quarter, we actually had a great month in July, and about halfway through August. Well, step back. The reason that July was so good is there was a lot of speculation that the Fed was maybe happier with where inflation was headed and how the interest rates, there was some thought that maybe they were seeing the results they wanted from the interest rate rising hikes that they've been putting into place. Mid-August, Chairman Powell came out and said inflation is public enemy number one, and we're going to continue on. And so any kind of hopes that the market had at that point were squashed. The last half of August and then through September were really awful, and that's what got us down for the quarter. So again, just kind of continuing the theme of the year for the fiscal year to date, and that gave us such negative returns. A little bit of good news, just kind of as we sit today, October was actually one of the best months in the history of the market. So huge bounce back in October. And then as far as November's been pretty positive as well. The last couple days, we've had some drop. We had a big drop yesterday, but again, still very strong year-to-date numbers. Now, of course, that's only not even quite a full 2 months into a new fiscal year, so it doesn't have any good impact on last year's numbers. And of course, it certainly doesn't highlight, where we'll be a year from now. But a little bit of good news in a very troubling, trying year. I will say, just kind of looking for a little bit of more silver lining, because there's not a lot of great news as it pertains to this report. But the investment managers as a whole did perform well, and that's what we want. We don't always expect to outperform in markets that are going up, but we do expect good, strong performance in volatile and downturn markets, because that's the strategy that we have in place, is to protect on the downside more so than trying to capture when all of the returns when the market's going up. And you can see we did good performance for the fiscal year in a relative sense. So the managers are doing what we expect them to do and what we hope for. So kind of a high level overview of where we stand at this particular point in time. Certainly I'll entertain any questions, or if y'all want to talk about any specifics a little further, happy to do that.
Any questions for Jeremy?
I, of course, wanted to bring up that annoying inflation piece of it. I missed the last meeting, and I apologize for that. It was picking up the son. But I know at the last meeting I was at, we were discussing, what if interest rates get to 7%? Do we consider just buying a fixed instrument for the time frame. And we had some discussion about it, and I guess the actuarial folks were on as well. And I just thought as the fiduciary group here that it's something that we need to entertain. I don't believe that we're going to get there. I am incredibly hopeful that we don't. But I looked this morning, and there's 4-year CDs paying 5% right now. And if we get to the 7%, do we start looking at, is it something that as a board we should discuss? Is that number 7.5% or 8%? Then what do we do to where you can lock in no interest or no risk for that interest rate that's FDIC or government paper that's backed like that? And it's just a conversation. I don't think we're ever going to get there, but I just thought it was something that we should throw out on the table for a couple minutes and discuss.
Okay. I'm not familiar with any of the rules of the plan, Jeremy. Maybe you can speak to that, but on purchasing CDs like that with the funds?
Well, if the board did want to go that route, and certainly I don't know what sort of, I suspect there might be some legal hurdles as far as statute rules of trying to do something like that. Although I don't know that that's the case, so I certainly can't state that off the top of my head. I've not had this particular idea broached before, so I've never really looked into it. I can tell you just as far as us, that the board would have to decide, hey, we want to separate from the Florida Municipal Pension Trust Fund, and then make that decision as a board to move that direction. That's something I feel extraordinarily confident that our fund would not do. We would not take any measures like that. So, that would have to be just kind of a board level decision, because that wouldn't be anything that we could offer you all. That would be something you'd have to make and then choose to do on your own. And again, and maybe you can do that. I know there's quite often there's some rules as it relates to what sort of diversification you have. So for instance, you can only have up to 25% of non-U.S. equity in a chapter portfolio. I don't know if there's any sort of CD or fixed income rules. It's nothing I've ever had to look into. Pedro, maybe you've had this question broached before. Maybe you know the answer off the top of your head. I'm just not sure myself.
Sure. So in the statutes, 175, it does provide certain limitations with respect to, as Jeremy mentioned, for example, your foreign holdings. It also has restrictions on having any one issuance account for more than 5% of the total portfolio, right? So you can't, so to speak, put all your eggs in one basket, let's say. But other than that, it's pretty flexible. So I think it would just be more of a conversation, in terms of maybe, were you thinking about the entire portfolio?
That was going to be my question. You're talking about just possibly a
equity
portion of
sleeve.
it, just to, and allow some to stay in, or
No, I was just broaching the subject that if
if it got to that point.
we
right.
start getting into Jimmy Carter rates, why would the board take on any risk when it could lock in these absurd rates for the pension fund? And that's really,
Right.
I didn't go any deeper than that. It was just more of, because we can't discuss it outside of here, so there's nobody to talk to it about.
At cocktail parties.
Yeah, right?
So, but I think to Jeremy's, initial point, that wouldn't be something that we could do with the current structure, right? Within the Florida Municipal Pension Trust Fund, within the FMPTF, right? Jeremy, there's no way to carve out a portion of the assets, let's say, and put it into something like this, like what we're discussing, right?
To carve it out, well, I guess I should back up a little bit. We do have an option. We've just never had a board choose it because it's cost prohibitive. We could build a portfolio strictly for a board. But one of the big tipping points of why a board might use us to administer their pension fund is that through economies of scale, you're getting access to managers that you wouldn't otherwise be able to, and you're getting extremely reduced fees as it relates to administration and investment expenses. And one of the big things is there's a consultant piece that every pension fund must have. You are, by being part of the trust fund, you all are automatically getting that consultant effort. That's part of the fees covered by us. If we were to essentially build an entire portfolio for a board, we can and would do that, but you lose that advantage because now the consultant and everything else we do, all the reporting, that has to now be done specifically for this board, and we could not spread those costs amongst everybody else, which provides that savings. So I guess to back up, yes, we could look at doing something specifically for you all, but it would increase the administrative costs to do that. So, I'd probably recommend against it, but we could certainly look into it. Again, I don't know, Pedro, kind of the 5% that you were talking about, which is also within our fund document as well. I don't know if a CD somehow usurps that and that doesn't count, but certainly if that is the case, that may nullify that whole possibility where 100% in a CD does count against that 5% in any one holding. And I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Well, again, this is just conversation. I'm not saying let's go run and do this. It's just conversation and food for thought. But I mean, it would be treasury bills or what have you, or some notes or whatever that would be government backed. But again, it's just something to think about. If you start getting them at 8%, I mean, it's stupid attractive.
Yeah. And certainly I understand wholeheartedly your point. It's the only downside is when do you get in and when do you get out. But as far as, if you got a risk-free 8% return, can't argue with the attractiveness there. It's certainly a valid point. It just, there's, the other questions that have to be answered, but I completely understand why
There's
you would.
liquidity issues too, right, with that? There would be liquidity issues as well.
You'd have to hold some money back in cash to pay,
It's
bills, pay retirees, correct.
We'll take all their contributions that come in monthly and use that. I'm just,
You looking for a job? You can maybe get off the board and then be a consultant.
no, I do it on a daily basis now. I don't need any more. No, it's just more of, I just wanted to throw it out there so that we're discussing it, and we won't have any idea until March how crazy the Fed has gone. God willing, in 2-3 weeks on the 15th, they move at 0.5% and slow down in January and go to 0.25%, and then things start getting better. But if they keep doing these aggressive rates, it may be something that logistically we need to put on our radar.
Sure. That's a good thought.
Any other questions or discussion for Jeremy? Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay.
Next item is the administrative budget report for September 30, 22.
Okay, this is the year-end results for the budget to actual for the administrative costs of the plan. The adopted budget for fiscal year 22 was a total of $60,000, and the actual results came in just over $48,000. And that would include in the plan expenses such as the actuary, administrator costs, legal, auditor, dues and subscriptions, insurance, and that type of thing. So basically, everything is in line. For perspective, the board did approve the fiscal year 23 budget at the last meeting for a total of about $66,000. So everything's right in line. We did build in some escalation into the next budget, so everything's as expected. Any questions?
So trustees, just for a little bit more context, this is essentially there was a disclosure that was required by the legislature a couple of years ago where initially, or they would ask for the board to adopt a budget for the fiscal year, which essentially you're telling the public, this is what we believe we're gonna spend, right? And then the bookend to that disclosure requirement is this final accounting piece. So we're telling the public, this is what we believe we're gonna spend, and then this is what we actually spent. And so, if there's no, issues with the tabulation, then a motion would be in order to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Next item is discussing a request for proposal for board attorney.
Okay, one of the board members had asked to put this on the agenda as a discussion item. The last RFP that the board completed for legal services for a board attorney was held in 2010, and several firms responded at that point. Sugarman Susskind was selected with a proposed monthly retainer of $12.50 per month. We were able to locate copies of the RFP responses and the original RFP if the board would like to look at that and go that route. Alternately, KJ may have some ideas or options for the board that he can present.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Please. I guess first and foremost, obviously, thank you for sticking with me for this long. But I think, when we first came on, there was, I think, a lot more going on in the plan than now. And so, I don't recall if we were the cheapest, but I don't think we probably weren't the most expensive. But just in terms of, I had my office look at it this morning or last night. And so, as you mentioned, it's a $12.50 monthly retainer, which is, I think it's probably the lowest of all of our firms, of all of our clients, rather. However, obviously, I appreciate the life cycle of the plan and where we are, where the fund is. So I'm more than willing, if you guys, if it's a fee discussion, I'm more than happy to maybe offer, if you guys are comfortable with my attending remotely, I could reduce the fee by 20%, if that would be acceptable. Or, I'm open to ideas or suggestions from you guys. I don't have and obviously, if you guys ever want me at a meeting, it doesn't mean I'm not gonna come to a meeting, and likely I would still probably come, or Caroline, who you guys have met as well. She lives a little bit closer by in Port Charlotte, so it's a little bit easier for her to get to some of the places. So, it doesn't mean that we would never come, we can't come, we wouldn't come. I think we would probably still want to come maybe at least once a year, even if we were, only attending remotely. But again, I'm pretty flexible and open to whatever you guys want, need. I've never had an issue losing. I've never lost a client, but I've definitely never lost a client over fees. So
Can I
I'm happy
ask,
to work with you guys however much I can.
I wasn't privy to the conversation, but what, did they give a reason as to why they wanted this discussion?
It was me, full and fair disclosure.
I'm
Yeah,
new, and so I'm,
Any other discussion on that? Thank you.
I feel like I'm stirring the pot. I don't mean to.
second.
Now I'm stirring the pot again.
Next item is excusing absence.
So if anybody has a chance to go to that one, that's a good one to go to. The first day is exclusively for new trustees, and the second day is a full day, and then the third day, I think it's usually over by about 11 or so. I think they may have 1 or 2 sessions in the morning, but it's a pretty quick day also. So there's no registration fee, so free is always great. Obviously, any room, travel, mileage, anything like that would be a reasonable expense and reimbursable by the plan. So if anybody has a chance to go to that one, it might be worthwhile. And then the FPPTA, the Florida Public Pension Trustees Association, they have 2 schools and annual conference. And so they're having a school at the end of January, January 29th through February 1st. And that is going to be at the Rosen Center, also in Orlando. That one does fill up pretty quickly. It's fairly well attended. I want to say it's usually 400 to 500 trustees. So it's a pretty large conference, especially in comparison to the state school, which is usually maybe about 100, 150 or so attendees. So if anybody's interested in attending that one, that's another one that's coming up that may work out a little bit better. And
Just
then
a
other
quick-
than that, yeah.
So the one I got was said it's December 13th through 15th? Did they change
Oh, no,
the
that's
dates?
right. No, that's right.
Okay.
Those are the dates.
But it's Tuesday through Thursday, I think, 13th through the 15th.
That's right, Tuesday through Thursday. That's correct. So it's the 13th through the 15th. Thank you.
Okay.
That's right. And that's really it. That's all I have for my report.
Pedro, I did have a question about the new statutory requirement for the board member email addresses.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that?
So it doesn't technically apply to us. It applies to, municipalities, public agencies here in Florida, but it doesn't technically apply
Okay.
to our board of trustees. It can if we want it to. We can, do we have emails now for the board? No, okay. So, I think it'd be more of a question, how do we use we get everybody's personal emails?
Correct.
Right. I think it could be also something where if we set up maybe just a dedicated email account for, the Oldsmar pension or Oldsmar firefighter pension, but it could be through a free service. It could be through Yahoo or Gmail or, whatever these things are. Or if we want to maybe have something through the city, some cities have kind of, had their IT set something up for the respective boards. And then obviously, that would be, I would imagine that they would want it to comply with the new requirements, but there's no need that we comply with it. If we want to, we can certainly, but it's not mandatory.
Okay.
That's a good question, though.
Yes.
Are you guys doing it now? Do you guys have to change anything, or?
As far as.
For the city,
For the
yeah.
other boards, we do.
Yeah. Why, what do they do now?
Right now they're just using their personal email addresses. We were looking at
Okay.
implementing something for February.
Yeah. So for the city boards, unfortunately, yes, you're gonna have to, and a lot of it is geared towards this kind of public access and public records and making sure that everybody kind of keeps public records. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, but, it is what it is. But I think, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I guess, we're not required to follow that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Need a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
I'll second. All in favor? Or any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody who does not want to adjourn?
Yeah.